65 Touring, exhibited by Stu Etheridge of Lynn Center, Illinois. That's quite a ways to come. Thank you very much for coming so far out. We saw the Model 64 Willis Knight Roadster come through. Well, by 1925, they had updated the styling a little bit. They put balloon tires on it. They called it the Model 65. That four-cylinder Knight engine in the 1924 ended up getting a Lanchester harmonic balancer. Early four-cylinder Willys Knight engines did get, they had a harmonic vibration that they would get at certain speeds, and a lot of people found that kind of uncomfortable. The Lanchester balancer smoothed it out. They run down the road nice. Anyway, original factory price $1,195. It was 185 cubic inch four-cylinder engine, 40 horsepower, 118-inch wheelbase. Stu does all his work himself. He did the paint work and all on this car, except for the top, I think he said. He didn't do the top, but it really turned out well. First year here last year, and we really glad to have you come out. Have a good ride home. Take care. Thank you.
Listen to all that noise as it pulls through. This is our first electric car, and perhaps not so surprising that we've seen only one here in the later half of our passenger review session. You would have seen many more, or at least could have if you were here yesterday for the early part of the presentation from the 1890s up to 1918. You know, there was a time when the question of fuel in an automobile was very much an open one, whether it would be steam, whether it would be electric, or whether it would be gasoline. Each fuel type had its own advantages. Steam was a technology with which the United States was very familiar at the turn of the 20th century. Of course, railroad locomotives have been using it for decades at that point. But the disadvantage, of course, it took you quite a while to warm up the car before they'd invented flash boilers at least, and there was this fear of riding on a vehicle that might explode, as steam locomotives would on occasion explode if the pressure got too high. Electric, the big advantage was you didn't have to get out and crank it to get it started. It was also very clean, very quiet. Electric cars, in fact, were marketed heavily toward women, particularly upper-class women, thought of as a much easier car to drive, not only because it's cleaner and quieter, but there's no transmission, of course. The electric motor can generate full torque across a wide range of speeds. It does not need a system of gears as you have in an internal combustion engine. But the electric is clearly faded by the time that this 1925 Detroit Electric was built. This comes to us, by the way, from Jack Beatty of Ann Arbor, Michigan. By this time now, gasoline is king. The self-starters, of course, solved the problem of getting out and cranking, and people have range anxiety at this time. You can get much farther on a tank of gasoline than you could on a charge on an electric car. Still, I'm afraid, a problem that people grapple with today, whether it's truly as bad as they think it is or not. People are afraid of going off somewhere and running out of juice.
I want to stay
It really was a concern in 1925, when outside of the cities, electrification could still be a sort of a rare thing.
The Detroit Electric was built by the Anderson Electric Car Company in Detroit, Michigan. They built them from 1907 to 1939. But really, this kind of Brougham body styling was built up into the 1930s. The late ones were actually built on Dodge chassis, I believe, using Dodge bodies with the electric components in them. They looked a little more like a regular car, but and Jack has quite a few of these Detroit Electrics and different kinds of electrics that he brings out for Old Car Fest, which is wonderful. You'll notice that he's kind of sitting in the back. There are two seats up front. The interior of this car, if you get to see it, it is like a parlor on wheels. And you drive from the back seat. It is still steered with a tiller in 1925. And there's a long handle that's the tiller, and there's a short handle above it that is the control lever that controls the switching. There are probably 5 speeds forward on this, 5 different electrical arrangements of the batteries and the wiring to different voltages, different amperages to be able to run the motor at different speeds. Anyway, they're a really fascinating car to drive. I've gotten to drive one, and it was really cool, but it's a different experience. So.
Glad you mentioned that face-to-face seating there. You can sit in that car. Of course, it's very quiet being an electric vehicle. You face each other. You can have a regular conversation in there. So I think probably Detroit Electric or Anderson deserves credit for inventing distracted driving, as well as their work in electric automobiles.
Thank you very much, Jack.